I think, before I start, I want to, myself, thank all of you for coming. And I want us to notice tonight, as we speak to each other and answer questions, hopefully difficult questions, and hopefully lots of questions from those of you who think you're going to vote no at this point or who are undecided. I want us to notice that we do it differently. I want us to notice that we don't do shouty, and there is no such thing in this room as a stupid question. And hold on to that thought, because that is how we can do politics. But it needs all of you to be involved in it. And I want to tell you a little bit about why I support independence, because, like others, it's not something I have always believed was the right choice for Scotland. In truth, it's not something I gave much thought to be honest. I was born and raised in Ayr, the daughter of a panel beater and a nurse. And my mum and dad, I guess, taught my brothers and I two really important things as we grew up. Two things that they kind of gave us to send us out into the world. The first one was that we had an absolute responsibility to make the most of every opportunity that came our way, to work hard, to look out for each other and for others, and to try and create a better life for our families in the same way as they had dedicated themselves to create a better life for us as their children. And the second thing they sent us out with, though, was equally important, and it was this: that no matter how well any one of us might do, how good a job we might get, how comfortable a home, how happy a personal life, how many holidays we could go on or things that we could own, we would never really be rich as human beings if the people around us, the people we lived with, didn't have those self-same opportunities and chances to make the best of their talents, to take opportunity and to be able to work hard. So with those things, if you like, ringing in our ears, and coming from a family that was not a politically active family, but was a traditionally Labour supporting family, with a strong belief in the importance of trade unions, the importance of people coming together to express their opinions, to try and create change, and to lobby for fairness, if you like. I left school, I trained as a nurse, I did various things, and I eventually ended up, as was said, in what has to be a hugely privileged position, and that is to be a senior political advisor to a First Minister in Scotland. Hugely privileged because you are inside government and you are there where decisions are getting made. And it was that experience that led me to begin to think that perhaps independence was an idea worth thinking through. And the reasons for that were these. A couple of examples. I could see what we could do in the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government when we had the power over, for example, education. That we could hold on to a very fine but very important Scottish tradition, which is free education. Scotland was one of the first countries to introduce free education. We are one of the best educated populations in Western Europe. And free education matters because it gives people the chance to make of themselves the best that they can. But I could also increasingly see that it didn't actually matter how well we did that, how good our school curriculum, how many teachers we had, how dedicated they were, low class sizes, better school buildings. If a child went to that school hungry because their mum and dad couldn't afford to feed them well enough, then that child would not get the best out of that education. If a child went to that school upset because mum and dad were arguing about what to do with Granny, because somebody in Westminster had decided that she lived in a house with one bedroom too many, that could be the house that she brought her family up in, then that child wouldn't get the best out of that education. So increasingly, I saw two things. First of all, that as a country, as a people, we're perfectly capable of making difficult decisions in government, of balancing the books, of dealing with complex and complicated matters. Education is complex and complicated. So is the health service, so is transport, so is environment. Those are the places we currently have power. But if we don't have the balancing powers to complete the circle of welfare, of being able to determine our own economic strategy, creating an industrial strategy for Scotland that matches the diverse communities of Scotland, from rural to urban to town, then the powers that we do have, we exercise with one arm tied behind our back. They are not, the results we get from those are not as good as they could be. So my first reason for supporting independence is a straightforward democratic reason. I've been able to vote in a UK general election for over 40 years. On 3 occasions, we got the Westminster government that the majority of people in Scotland voted for. Now, it isn't about being in the huff because we didn't get our own way, or being peeved. It's because it matters. It's because the decisions that are made at that UK level, with powers that they have that we currently don't, affect our lives every single day. That is why that child will go to school hungry. That is why currently 1 in 4 children in Scotland is living in poverty, and 2/3 of those children have at least one parent in work. That is why our pensioners are the worst paid in Western Europe. Our childcare costs are the highest. Our transport costs are the highest. And we have the largest wage gap between men and women in Western Europe. Decisions made at a UK government level by governments that we did not vote for. This is not a go at the current Tory and Lib Dem government, well, not them on their own. It is, if you like, a criticism of all the previous ones too. Because the situation we find ourselves in is one that a Labour government over all those years also contributed to. And my dad at this point would be burling in his grave. Because when people like my dad came back from the end of that Second World War, those who'd fought overseas, those who'd worked hard and contributed here in this country to the end of that Second World War, if you like, they kind of created a contract with the government of the time. And that contract was this, because they were so determined that they would not come back to the kind of country they had left. A country with a huge gap between those who had and those who hadn't. A country that had come out of the 30s with mass unemployment, hunger marches, and people destitute. It is not overdramatic to say, no, we're not there right this minute, but we're far too damn close for it to be all those years since. But they came back determined that that is not the country that they would then live in. And they did a kind of contract with the government. And the contract was, we will work hard, we'll pay our taxes, we'll look after our families, we'll take responsibility, and in return, you, government, to whom we lend our power, you will give us free education and a national health service that is free at the point where we need it, where we will get care, attention and treatment, not based on how much we can pay, but based on our need, where our children will receive education to the highest level for as long as that is what they are able to do, based on their ability to learn and not on their ability to pay. Systematically, over at least the last 15 to 20 years, that contract at a UK level has been broken down. And we are now dealing with the results of that. So democracy is not a theoretical argument for independence. It is a practical, real-life argument for independence. We do lend our power to politicians, and we are now in a situation where they have forgotten that. They think that it is their right. and that therefore the decisions they make we will adhere to. And they think that if we traditionally support Party X or Party Y, then if Party X says jump, that's what we'll do. And if Party Y says sit down, we'll do that as well. What this independence debate has done, if it does nothing else, and of course I hope that it actually succeeds in winning a vote for independence, but if it's done nothing else, it has across the country genuinely, truly galvanised people, many of whom are in no political party, many of whom, especially women, have not been involved in political discussions before. It has galvanised us because it offers us an opportunity to look at the facts of whether or not we can be independent and to imagine what we could be if we were. So let's look quickly at some of those facts. Could Scotland be independent? We are currently the 14th richest country in Western Europe, in OECD countries. The 14th richest. So if we did nothing else, if we were independent tomorrow, and we didn't change anything about the economic policy or this or that or the next thing, we'd still be the 14th richest country in the world. We do put more money into the Treasury than comes back. We are rich in natural resources. We have 65% of the European Union's oil reserve off our shores. We have 25% of their wind and wave power. We are rich in our natural resources, we are rich in our industrial sectors, in food and drink, in tourism, in life sciences. We are rich in our universities, the top three of our universities in the top 200 in the world for a small country. But most importantly, we are rich in our people, in all of you. We have talent and ability and energy and experience and ideas. So we are a rich country. But as was said, we're part of the fourth most unequal country when we're in the Union. And that is what produces a 54% rise in food banks in 1 year. That is what produces a situation where the Red Cross, who I always thought helped people out there, we gave money to them to help people out there, are now delivering food parcels in our country, where we have those 1 in 4 kids in poverty. The fourth most unequal. Now that's not just, for me, morally wrong. Economically, it's downright daft. It's daft to have that amount of unused talent, ability and energy. Think what we could do if we could harness that on top of everything we've already got. If we could bring those individuals currently excluded from contributing economically to their country, but also to their own families, to their own sense of self-worth. If we could bring them through economic opportunity back into the world that many of us are privileged to work in and live in. Think what we could do with that. So there is an argument too about fairness. And let's look, before I finish, at what the alternative is. What is the alternative to voting for independence? The alternative is to stay where we are. We are told that independence is risky, but staying as part of the Union is not. Really? When we know that whichever of the UK parties we look at, they are all going to do the same, because they have said so. The Conservatives and Liberal Democrats have said we will continue, if we're elected in 2015 and in government, to pursue our economic policy of austerity. We will continue, and in fact we will increase the cuts on welfare benefits. We will continue to have an economic policy focused on the southeast of England, but not elsewhere. And much as it breaks my heart, the Labour Party has said exactly the same. They've said exactly the same. That economic policy, we're up for that. We'll keep the welfare cuts. And in fact, we'll even have a wee debate about whether or not we shouldn't have a regional cap on welfare. Because let's be honest, it costs less to live in Scotland than it does in the southeast of England. Really? Really? Have you noticed that? I haven't, and absolutely certain the people further up our country most definitely haven't. So we know what we will get if we vote no. We know exactly what we'll get, and there for me lies the risk. We're told that we'd be part of a bigger, safer, stronger union. We have been part of that bigger, safer, stronger union for many a year, and this is where we are. I'm still waiting to hear what the advantages are for us in staying. I have not heard those yet, and it is on us to start asking those questions. Where's the advantage in staying as part of the union? Staying with austerity, staying with welfare cuts, staying as part of the fourth most unequal in Western Europe, with poorer pensioners, higher transport, higher childcare, and that big wage gap between men and women. Those aren't advantages to me. So I don't think that staying as part of the union is the safe bet. And I think independence is our best bet. Now, it's not, on the 19th of September this year, or even come 2015, if we're independent, there's not going to be fairy dust scattered all over Scotland. It's not suddenly all going to become okay, but it gives us the full powers of a normal country and our capacity to make the right choices about the political parties that come to us wanting our vote and the policies that they want to implement. It does mean, because we've got a different electoral system in Scotland, that we will get the government that most of us vote for in Holyrood. And it does mean that we can influence those. So as someone said earlier, I think it was Kirsten, this isn't about Alex Salmond, it's not about Joanne Lamond, it's not about any of those politicians, and I'm sure it grieves them greatly to know it's not about them. It's about us and our choice, and whether or not we believe that individually and with our neighbours and collectively, we have the capacity, the energy and the will to trust each other and trust in ourselves and choose to be independent. I choose to trust you. We can be independent, and we can then collectively build a fairer Scotland anew. Thank you.